Hey guys, my name's Tori Montemiro, and I'm going to be talking about tourism and disasters. So, how are tourism and disasters related? First off, much of tourism relies on natural resources or nature itself. So, one example of this would be like ecotourism. For example, people go to South America to see the Amazon, and they go to India and Nepal to see the Himalayas. But then also just most tourist infrastructure, no matter what it is reliant on natural resources. So, what does this have to do with disasters? When disasters hit, tourists are vulnerable to the aftermath of these storms and disasters as well. It's not just the locals. And in some cases, tourists are even less prepared to deal with these types of disasters. And also, disasters have the potential to destroy tourist infrastructure, which can have negative economic and employment impacts. Another thing is that when a disaster hits an area that's known for its tourism, it decreases the likelihood that people will return there because public perception of that area changes to one of fear. But to just say how important tourism is, the World Travel and Tourism Council estimates that tourism generates about 10% of the global GDP and contributes to almost 300 million jobs. So I wanted to go ahead and talk about two specific examples of how tourism and disaster were related. The first one is in Uttarakhand, India. Uttarakhand has a large amount of tourism, one because of its natural beauty, and two because there's a temple there that's one of the most religious in all of India. And so people go there frequently throughout the year for pilgrimage reasons. But this area is also prone to landslides, earthquakes, and other natural disasters. So in 2013, it experienced a major flash flood during its peak tourism season, and many locals and tourists lost their lives in this disaster. So not only was it a horrible disaster, but it also took that specific temple over a year to open its doors again. And when it finally did open its doors, the bookings to come to this specific area, this specific village, were only at 1% of what they had been previously. And that was largely due to the fact that public perception turned to one of fear that if a disaster like this struck, that it could strike again, and that left negative impacts that lasted beyond the aftermath of the storm. Another example of this would be disasters in the Caribbean, especially hurricanes, so specifically the 2017 hurricanes. I'm sure we all saw or were affected by Hurricane Maria. Not only did that have a negative impact in tourism on the islands that it did hit, it negatively impacted the entire Caribbean as a whole, because public perception was that everywhere in the Caribbean was unsafe to travel. Whether or not that island had been hit badly by the storm didn't really matter, which was an interesting way that tourism was affected not just by the physical damages of this disaster, but hurricane season resulted in an estimate of almost 1 million visitors lost to the Caribbean. And it was estimated that this would take up to 4 years to recover from. And a lot of what the Caribbean's GDP and employment is based off of is the tourism industry. So this can be detrimental to not just tourism, but the entire economy of places when a disaster hits as well. And here are just my references for this. So thank you guys so much. And if you have any questions, you can comment them below.